Time of the day for points of personal privilege. Are there any senators seeking the floor? For what purpose does the senator from Lynn, Senator Hogg, seek the floor?
Mr. President, am I in order for a point of personal privilege?
You're in order, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President, colleagues in the Senate. I just want to report to you that I had the opportunity on Friday to visit 3 of our counties in southwest Iowa that are suffering from extraordinary devastation from the flood of 2019. And as somebody who lived through the flood of 2008 in Cedar Rapids, it always is difficult to see people facing the heartache and the trauma and the financial losses that they face after a catastrophic flood like that. By the way, those of you who want to leave to try to catch the show, I won't be offended. Just so you know that, because I know there are people who want to leave. But this is really the first realistic opportunity we've had to talk since Friday about it. So here's the situation in Fremont and Mills counties alone. By my calculation, there are at least 800 homes and businesses that have been flooded and evacuated. The floodwaters remain throughout Pacific Junction. Hamburg and Glenwood, when I was there, were both without water or sewer. No water, no sewer. 2 fairly large towns, Hamburg and Glenwood. The hospital in Hamburg was operating on a limited basis because it had no water or sewer, a hospital without basic utilities. Schools in Hamburg and Glenwood were operating without running water or bathrooms. Schools. The superintendent in Hamburg pleaded for 100 FEMA trailers immediately. The only problem with that, of course, is that they can't put in trailers when there's no water or sewer. But his concern was displaced families needed to have a place to live, or else they would leave the district and leave their home. The Glenwood superintendent told us he'd been unable to contact about a dozen families in the district, not even able to reach them. It was believed that some families had already moved away, perhaps permanently, and other families were sheltering in other counties with family or to be closer to their employment. Hamburg has the debris piles that are all too familiar to people who lived in Cedar Rapids in 2008. The giant walls of everybody's personal possessions just put out on the curb to be picked up and put into a landfill. Farmers are facing very large losses of stored grain, which may not be insured and which may not be covered by federal disaster programs, although we certainly hope they will be. Many fields are still completely underwater, and the livestock losses appear to be uncountable. Over 20 businesses in Mills County were at least temporarily suspended operations due to flooding or loss of water. 88% of the businesses in Hamburg were flooded. There was an owner of a food processing facility who employs 45 people in Hamburg, and he's trying to figure out some way to keep his business going when he had 10 or 12 feet of water through his facility and was unable to get back in there. Railroads were shut down. Interstate 29 still closed under Highway 34. The Highway 2 and Highway 34 bridges across the Missouri River still closed. Many other roads, county roads, still closed and severely damaged. We have a crisis in western Iowa right now. And with all due respect, spending whatever time we've spent over the last 2 days because somebody decided to put E-Verify on the calendar on Sunday for a bill that has no chance of passing in the House, when there's a crisis in this state, a humanitarian crisis, is offensive. But anyway, that hasn't stopped me from doing double duty. I tried to provide a better alternative to E-Verify. You rejected it. That's fine. That's your decision to make. But also today, I want to tell you that I am challenging Governor Reynolds and Republican legislative leaders to show us your disaster recovery plan. In 2008, Republicans, Governor Culver won't call a special session. Well, we don't need a special session. We're in session, and we're more than 2 weeks after the bomb cyclone hits Nebraska and western Iowa with 6 inches of rain combined with snowmelt on frozen ground to create the biggest flood in the history of Mills and Fremont County, and I haven't heard a thing about, other than it showing up and saying we're concerned and we're going to work with federal people, what is this legislative body going to do? So I have some proposals today to share with you that Senator Smith, who also was with me on the tour, thinks is a good idea, Senator Jay Smith. We need to make sure our small businesses and farms can continue to operate when they have no revenue, no customers, and they're facing huge losses, and their employees throughout southwest Iowa facing the loss of their jobs. And so what we need are grants, cash grants to businesses to keep them going. I believe that it should be something in the magnitude of $10 million from our ending balance to make sure that businesses don't go out of business. By the way, in Cedar Rapids, we did a great job with business recovery. We still lost 200 businesses and 1,000 jobs in that event. Because the feds don't provide assistance for businesses except to say, go get your SBA loan at 4 to 8%. So we need business and farm continuation grants to help our employers in southwest Iowa. We have a disaster-affected business program that we created after 2008 in the High Quality Jobs Program. But the problem is there's only $4.7 million left for this fiscal year. And I bet Debbie Durham has other things she's thinking about using that money for. So we better supplement that money. I'm glad we were able to bail out the salt, the road salt. I'm glad we had a bailout for road salt. Where's the bailout for the businesses that have sustained the worst flood in southwest Iowa's history and are out of business? We need to help communities, cities, counties, and nonprofits that have been flooded because they're going to need financial assistance to deal with this. After 2008, we provided community grants to help those entities. It took us till January because Governor Culver did not call the special session that he should have called. But in January, we provided community disaster grants. My recollection is about $22 million. So Senator Smith and I are proposing a $10 million disaster revolving loan fund so that communities in this state can do the things that FEMA and the federal government won't help with, like strategic long-term planning to relocate, to move out of the floodplain. You all have heard me say before that the city of Hamburg asked for $615,000 in 2014 to safeguard its water plant, but the state had no program, and Homeland Security decided that that wasn't the priority with the limited federal funds they had. So let's put money out there for communities to do the hazard mitigation to safeguard our people and our property. And the proposal I've made today is that we do $24 million of that so that communities have a place to go using ending balance one-time money so that people have a place to go. Also recommending that we restore past cuts to the DNR floodplain management program. You cut that floodplain management program $115,000 over the last 2 years. Let's restore that. You cut the Iowa Flood Center at the University of Iowa by $328,000. Let's restore that so that they have the funds to do the preventive work they need. And I also believe that we need money so that the DNR and the Flood Center can assess what caused the flood of the Missouri River. Because when I was out there, a lot of people were blaming the Army Corps of Engineers. Well, it wasn't the Army Corps of Engineers that failed to maintain the levees. It wasn't the Army Corps of Engineers that dropped the bomb cyclone with 6 inches of rain on melting snow and frozen ground. It wasn't the Army Corps of Engineers that had the dam break on the border of Nebraska and South Dakota that forced the water downstream that made Gavin's Point increase their releases. So let's stop blaming the Army Corps of Engineers and ask our experts in the state to assess why the flood happened. And by the way, there's no pride in authorship here. Maybe something's too much, maybe something's too little, maybe there's something that I've overlooked. Maybe there's something else we can do. But for God's sake, can we start to focus on the humanitarian crisis in Western Iowa rather than all this garbage we're doing? Government is not about ideology. It's about practical, helping communities and people solve practical problems. But so much of this stuff just been ideologically driven stuff, driven by the desire to be able to, I guess, run attack ads. That's shameful. So Governor Reynolds, legislative leaders, people of Iowa, let's get some real proposals out there to help not only the businesses and the communities and the farmers and the workers who have lost so much, let's help them, but let's also have a real conversation about how we're going to stop this ongoing damage to our state from flooding. How many billion-dollar flood disasters is it going to take before we wake up and do something? So let's wake up, Mr. President. Thank you for the opportunity to make the point. Let's get serious about this. There are people hurting in our state right now from an unprecedented natural disaster that hit Southwest Iowa, and we need to help them. And I'm anxious to hear people's proposals on that. Thank you very much.
For what purpose does the senator from Adams, Senator Shipley, seek the floor?